You ever get that feeling, like deep down that you're sort of stuck in that 9 to 5 loop? You're working really hard, but the financial progress you expected, it's just not quite there. Well, we hear you. And honestly, you are definitely not alone in feeling that way. Today, we're doing a deep dive. We're looking into the insights and also the questions you brought us about Robert Kiyosaki's book from '97, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, this thing sold over 40 million copies. It's huge. And it's really more than just a finance guide, isn't it? It's kind of a mindset revolution, really. Still sparks a lot of debate. So our mission here with this deep dive, using the sources you shared, is to unpack its main messages. We'll dig into the controversies too and try to understand the lasting impact of this classic book. Really help you get a handle on its fundamental challenge to how we usually think about money.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, and your materials brought this out so well, is how he sets the whole thing up. These two contrasting figures, right? He had his actual dad, his biological father, superintendent of education, actually, but financially always seemed to struggle. And then there was his friend's dad, high school dropout, but he ended up becoming a millionaire. And this contrast, this stark difference, that's what he labels poor dad and rich dad. It's like the foundation for the whole book's philosophy.
Right. And the kicker is, his poor dad, the educated one, followed all the rules we're usually taught. Get the degree, climb the ladder, save your money. But the rich dad, he just flipped that script completely.
Yeah.
Kiyosaki's main point right from the get-go seems to be that this crucial skill, financial literacy, it's just not taught, not in school anyway.
Yeah, and that raises a huge question, doesn't it? One Kiyosaki really leans into. If schools aren't giving us this knowledge, this essential tool, well, where do people learn it? And what are the consequences, long term, of that gap in education? His core message really flows right out of that. Rich don't work for money. They strategically make money work for them. Now, that's not just about investing in stocks or something. It's a whole reframing, how we value our time, our effort. Kiyosaki's basically saying, look, stop trading your hours for dollars. Instead, build systems that earn dollars for you, so your hours are freed up. It shifts the focus from just linear income, like getting a raise, to potentially exponential wealth creation. That's a big idea, often missed in standard financial advice.
That is a powerful distinction. Yeah. But, for a lot of people, that idea, making money work for you, it might still feel a bit abstract, especially when you rely on that paycheck every month.
Yeah.
So how does Kiyosaki make this more concrete, turn it into actual mindsets?
Yeah.
Particularly when he talks about the rat race.
Well, he breaks it down really nicely into two different ways of thinking, two mindsets. There's what he calls the poor dad's trap. That's where thinking I can't afford it just shuts down the possibilities. It leads to this cycle of debt, job dependency, that's the rat race he talks about so famously. But then there's the rich dad's play, and this flips the question. It's not I can't, it's how can I afford it? And that pushes you to proactively build, assets, things that actually generate cash flow, like maybe a stock that pays dividends, or a side business, or perhaps a rental property that brings in money each month. It's a really crucial difference, between these productive assets, things putting money in your pocket, and liabilities. Liabilities just constantly take money out. Like, that fancy car that loses value the second you drive it off the lot, that's a classic liability in his view.
When I first read that, especially the asset versus liability thing.
Right.
Wow. It completely changed how I looked at my own home. I always been told your house is your biggest asset.
Right.
And then Kiyosaki comes along, pretty provocatively, and basically says, hang on, if it's just costing you money, mortgage, taxes, upkeep, and it's not bringing anything in, then it's actually a liability. It was such a jolt. Seriously. Made me rethink pretty much everything I thought I knew about personal finance.
Precisely. Yeah, he really challenges those assumptions we just, absorb. And he's not just talking about, say, renting out a room, although that's an example. He's pushing you to look at every expense, even your own house, through this lens of, can it generate income? So instead of just seeing the mortgage payment as this unavoidable drain, he gets you thinking, okay, how could this cost center actually become a revenue stream? Maybe it is renting a room, or maybe it's a home office deduction, or I don't know, some kind of creative financing. It's like finding out you've been playing a game, but nobody ever actually explained the financial rules to you properly.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And, the story of the book itself is kind of amazing. Kiyosaki facing, 20 rejections, then self-publishing it and watching it just explode into this cultural phenomenon that's pretty inspiring. But for a book that leans so heavily on his personal story, one of the big debates is about, how real is the central figure? And this is where it gets tricky for some critics, right? Kiyosaki later admitted his rich dad wasn't actually one single person. He was more of a composite character. a mix of different people who influenced him.
Right. And that detail, that's definitely been a sticking point, as several of your sources pointed out. The fact that Rich Dad was a composite, it's not just a small biographical note. It kind of challenges the book's premise as, a straight factual account. So it makes you ask, right, does the power of a financial idea hinge on it being empirically factually true? Or can a really compelling story, even if it's, let's say, embellished a bit, still have a huge impact on how people think? Critics often see it as, well, maybe a lack of transparency, whereas fans tend to argue, look, the lessons themselves are valid, that's what matters, whether the Rich Dad was one guy or 10 guys combined.
And you really can't talk about Rich Dad, Poor Dad without getting into the criticisms, can you? It's a book that truly divides people. So what are some of the main arguments against it? And, do they hold water?
Well, a big one revolves around real estate. Kiyosaki champions it as a key way to build assets. But critics rightly point out he often kind of glosses over the real risks involved, things like dealing with nightmare tenants or sudden expensive repairs or market crashes. And real estate isn't exactly liquid, right? You can't just sell it instantly if you need cash. So this lack of detailed how-to or maybe enough emphasis on risk management, that's why some people dismiss it. They see it, perhaps unfairly, as more of a get-rich-quick type of thing rather than a fundamental shift in thinking. But I think the book's main goal isn't really to be a detailed financial roadmap. It's more about provoking that shift in perspective. Kiyosaki's real strength, I think, despite the criticisms, is making these abstract financial ideas memorable, making them stick. He does it through these relatable stories, like when he talks about buying that comic book store as a kid with his friend, or the house with the missing window that became an investment. Those stick with you.
Okay, so wrapping this up a bit, what does all this mean for you, the listener, looking at your sources? This book, it's probably not going to give you a precise step-by-step plan for your finances. And yeah, it definitely has critics, especially about some of the specific advice or lack thereof. But maybe its main purpose is to be that slap awake. If you've ever caught yourself blaming the system for money troubles, Rich Dad, Poor Dad kind of turns it around and asks, okay, but what's your system? It really pushes this idea of seeing opportunities where other people might just see problems or obstacles. Like that whole idea we talked about, looking at every cost, even your home, through an income-generating lens. So while Kiyosaki's specific advice might not be perfect for everyone, that core challenge he throws down seems pretty timeless. Stop just working for money. Instead, figure out how to make your money work for you. So yeah, after this deep dive into the materials you sent, where do you stand? Are you feeling caught in that rat race, or do you feel like you're actively, consciously building assets? This book really, it acts like a mirror in a lot of ways. Hold it up. Honestly, do your current habits, your financial actions, actually line up with where you want to be, wealth-wise? Maybe next time you get paid, just ask yourself that question. Am I buying more liabilities here, or am I actually planting some seeds for future wealth?
Yeah, and you have to acknowledge Kiyosaki definitely played a big part in kicking off this broader conversation about financial literacy. Even with all the debate around his specific methods and advice, he undeniably pushed countless people to just think differently about their relationship with money. For a lot of folks, reading that book was probably the very first step they ever took towards really becoming financially aware.
Absolutely. And maybe here's a final thought, something to chew on as you reflect on Kiyosaki's challenge. If the book asks, what's your system, when you feel like blaming the system? How does that shift things? How does truly seeing opportunities where others just see obstacles, like turning that liability into an asset, renting out the room, finding ways for your money to earn while you're sleeping, how does that fundamentally change your whole approach? Just consider, what unexpected opportunities might you be overlooking in your own life right now, simply because you haven't quite reframed your perspective yet?